wishing to receive further notice or a copy of the committee's decision, please contact the County of Brant Planning Department. The order of delegation are as follows: planning staff report and recommendation, applicant agent presentation, questions and discussions, public comments, further questions of clarification, decision. Immediately following the Committee of Adjustment meeting this evening, we will, there is no stopper date. I will now call attendance. Please indicate by stating present if you are in attendance. Mary Jane Brown, present. Harry Emmett, will note he is absent. Bob Hamilton,
present.
Jane Penag,
Present.
Rebecca Smith,
present.
Steve Schmidt,
Present.
John Vamus.
Present.
We will move to item 2, approval of agenda. Do any members have items to be added to the agenda? I believe there are none. May I request a mover and a seconder? Member Smith, Member Penang. Can you please provide the motion, Member Smith?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
And all in favor? Please indicate if you are in favor of the motion, starting with Member Penang.
Yes.
Member Vamus?
Yes.
Member Smith?
Yes.
Member Schmidt?
Yes.
Member Hamilton?
Yes.
And Brown, yes. We will now move to item 3 on the agenda, declaration of pecuniary interest. Are there any members who would like to declare a conflict of interest for any item on the agenda this evening? It's noted there are no members who have conflicts with any item on the agenda. We will now move to item 4, and it has been noted that the minutes from the previous meeting were not included with the package to some of the committee members. So I would request there be a motion to defer that part of the agenda, and we can approve it or correct it next meeting. Could I have a mover? Member Hamilton, seconder, Member Schmidt. I'll now call for a vote. Could I please have your motion first?
I move that by myself and seconded by Member Schmidt that the minutes for last meeting be deferred until the next meeting in March.
Thank you. And all members, please indicate if you are in favor of deferring the approval of the minutes until next meeting, starting with Member Penag.
Yes.
Member Vamus?
Yes.
Member Smith?
Yes.
Member Schmidt?
Yes.
Member Hamilton?
Yes.
And Brown, yes. The motion has carried. The minutes from the previous meeting have been deferred until our meeting in March. I will now introduce the item 6.1 for application SV123AA and turn it to staff for the presentation of the report and recommendation.
Good evening, Committee of Adjustment and members of the public. This is a sign variance for the lands located at 185 Pinehurst Road within the geographic township of South Dumfries. These subject lands are located on the southwest side of Pinehurst Road and Hartley Avenue intersection. The sign variance is to permit relief from the sign bylaw to permit 8 fascia signs where only 2 are permitted, as well as to permit 2 incidental signs less than 50 meters away from each other. The subject lands are designated general commercial within the County of Brant official plan. This sign variance is in conformity with the County of Brant official plan as it permits the restaurant use. The subject lands are zoned general commercial within the County of Brant zoning bylaw, and the proposed sign is permitted within the zone. The proposal is considered to be in keeping with the intent of the County of Brant zoning bylaw. No public comments were received as part of the public circulation notice. As a result of the upcoming sign bylaw review, staff is of the opinion that the request is in keeping with the overall intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw. The request is minor in nature and will not negatively affect the adjacent land uses. I am recommending approval of the sign variance application subject to the attached conditions. Thank you and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lauren. Does the committee have any questions or comments to staff? I believe there are none. Is the agent or the applicant in person to make a presentation or add any details to the staff report? No, they're not. Does the committee have any further questions or comments? I believe there are none. I would now request a mover to put forward the motion on this application, SV 123AA. Mr. Hamilton, could I have your motion to see if there is a seconder available?
Okay. Moved by myself, or the motion that we accept the application SV 1-23-AA, with the list of the conditions for as it fits the zoning bylaw and the
Thank you. Is there a second on that motion? Member Schmidt? I will now call the vote. Members, please indicate if you are in favor of this motion, starting with Member Peneg.
Yes.
Member Vamus?
Yes.
Member Hamilton?
Yes.
Member Schmidt?
Yes.
Member Smith?
Yes.
And Brown, yes. The motion has carried. Application SV 123AA has been approved. I will now introduce the item 6.2 for application B722LG and turn it over to staff for the presentation of the report and the recommendation.
Good evening, Committee of Adjustment and members of the public. This is a validation certificate for lands located at 231 Fairfield Road within the geographic township of Burford. The subject lands are located south of Fairfield Road and east of Middletown Line Road. The subject lands contain one existing dwelling, an agricultural structure, and detached garage. The lands to be registered for the road widening are vacant, and the surrounding area consists of agricultural land uses. The validation certificate B723LG is seeking to validate the title of the subject lands in order to write a contravention to the Planning Act. The previous owners of the subject lands and the road widening were the Costas. The road widening lands were used for road widening at the intersection of Fairfield Road and Middletown Line Road. The subject lands were then transferred to the current owners, the Pettys, on October 16, 1979, which conveyed all of the subject lands with the exception of the road widening lands. Further investigation established there is no record of a registered transfer of the road widening lands to the municipality, which further indicates that the transfer of the subject lands to the Pettys was a contravention to the Planning Act. As the road widening had not been transferred to the current owners, the owners will be unable to transfer the road widening to the county, and the road widening lands will remain unregistered. The county will be looking into options for appropriating these lands. The subject lands are designated as agricultural and natural heritage within the counties of Brant official plan and zoned as agricultural and natural heritage within the County of Brant zoning bylaw. A validation certificate does not require application notice to be circulated to property owners within 60 meters of the subject lands, or a public notice sign to be posted, as the purpose of this application is to rectify title on an existing parcel. Staff and agencies are not circulated as part of the comments, as their comments and concerns would have been addressed once the road widening was originally established. It is my professional opinion that the validation certificate application for lands municipally known as 231 Fairfield Road meet the criteria of Section 57 of the Planning Act and conform to planning legislation. Therefore, it is my professional recommendation that the validation certificate application B723LG be approved. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lauren, for the presentation. Does the committee have any questions or comments to staff? Member Hamilton, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair to staff, the land that is in question right now, has it been utilized by the county or is it going to be utilized?
Through the chair, so the land that essentially, so there's two different parcels. The subject lands that are currently owned by the Petties, this is the land that they're seeking to validate. The registered road widening, they don't actually own, so it's just the subject lands, the parcel that they.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments or question for staff? I believe there are none. And is the agent present?
Yes, the agent is present.
Do you wish to add any further information to the staff report?
If anyone had any questions, because I know validations is a little bit different than what we normally do here, I'm happy to answer questions. Otherwise, no.
Does the committee have any questions? Right. And could we have your name too for the record?
Tom Henderson.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions, final questions from the committee? I believe there are none. I'll now request a motion on this application. Member Smith, please go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve application B723LG.
Thank you. Is there a second for this motion? Member Penag. I'll now put the motion to the committee. Please indicate if you are in favor of it, starting with Member Penag.
Yes.
Member Vamus.
Yes.
Member Hamilton.
Yes.
Member Schmidt.
Yes.
Member Smith.
Yes.
And Member Brown, yes. The motion has carried. The application B723LG has been approved. I will now introduce the item 6.3 for applications B1, B2, B3-23 DN and turn it over to staff for the presentation of the report and the recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a 3 consent applications, B1, B2, and B3 for the property located at 15 Hutchings Road in Paris. This is consisting of block 199 on recently approved draft plan of subdivision, a registered plan of subdivision. And the agent, Mr. Salas-Leal, is with us this evening on behalf of their client, Kingwood Homes, or Kingwood Paris Meadows Limited, and staff are recommending approval of this application. So the subject lands are identified on the screen, highlighted in blue. The key map provides context of the general location being north of the 403, south of Powerline Road, along the east side of Rest Acres Road. The aerial image identifies that the lands are currently vacant, and part of what will be future Hutchings Road. The surrounding land uses consist of commercial, residential, institutional, and industrial. The current designation in our official plan is commercial in that pink color. The current zoning on the property is general commercial C2. The proposal in front of you this evening, and as outlined in the staff report, proposes 3 consent applications. B1 is consisting of a lot line adjustment of approximately 0.31 hectares to be severed from block 199 and consolidated with block 198 to the east. Consent application B2 is a lot creation to sever 1 new commercial lot having a frontage of approximately 33 meters and an area of 0.38 hectares. And B3 is a consent requesting to establish an access easement, or in this case, it's a blanket easement over block 199 in favor of the proposed severed lands to be created as a result of consent application B223DN. And the purpose of this blanket easement is to facilitate shared access for ingress and egress and access internal to the site. Staff are supportive of the consent applications as well as the timing of these applications. It is considered appropriate as further pre-consultation meetings will be required, and subsequent site plan control applications will also be required to facilitate detailed design, and that blanket easement will give a little bit of flexibility to where and how we can limit access points along Hutchins Road and entrances connecting the sites. You'll notice a number of conditions included as part of the approval of these applications. So the technical comments that have been received have been are reflected in the conditions, which acknowledge and consider future needs for traffic consideration, roadway improvements, infrastructure expansion and relocation along Hutchins Road and the Greater Rest Acres Road corridor. No further concerns were raised as part of the public or technical circulation of this application, and it's my professional opinion that consent application B1, B2, and B3 be approved, subject to the attached conditions. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dan, for the report. Does the committee have any questions or comments to staff on this application? Member Hamilton?
Through the chair to staff, the easement, is it just to be utilized now until that becomes a viable road?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Member Hamilton, the easement will be in place on the parcel itself. That road, Hutchins Road, is constructed to a certain standard today, and it is only serving the Ford warehouse that's currently there. There are a number of things that have to fall into place, which include reconstruction of that intersection at Rest Acres and Hutchins. There is a planned roundabout. Detailed design is being finalized. Permits from the MTO, and extension of services. So there's a number of things that are captured through the conditions and will be continue to be captured to facilitate actual development of those lands. So the easements are to serve whatever urban design comes of those sites.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Member Smith?
I maybe have a question through to the applicant, if I may.
I believe the applicant is present, or their agent is here.
Or maybe I can wait for the presentation if that works best.
Are you prepared to make a presentation? Can you add to staff report? Can we have your name?
My name is Eric. My name is Eric Soleslay. I'm a planner with GSP Group, and we're the agent for Kingwood Paris Meadows. I don't have a presentation per se, but I've reviewed the staff report with my client, and they have no concerns with the recommendations therein.
And you're in agreement with the conditions?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Just through the chair to the applicant, in terms of the blanket easement, because I know a building will be going on that site, I just want to make sure that there's no issues legally with it being a blanket access easement across the whole property. So if there's going to be an easement agreement, just making note of that. I know it's probably going to be taken care of, but it is a blanket easement, so just noting that.
Yeah. No, my client is okay with that, and as I said, as Dan said, the blanket easement will be refined once the access to Hutchins Road is verified.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Member Hamilton?
Through the chair to the applicant, just wanting, when I was out there looking at it, there seems to be a fair large drainage ditch coming from the arena coming over to the road. I'm assuming that that's going to be all tied in or has been tied in with the for stormwater management now, or will be with the development of that land. Is that because it was like 4 feet deep, that ditch area through there. So just curious, that's all.
Yeah, well, the detailed engineering work has already been done and approved, but that drainage area will probably be taken care of at time when the further refinements are done.
Okay, with the with the planning and everything else that goes in for the building and all that, it would be covered off in the. All right, thank you.
Any further comments or questions for the applicant or for staff? I did have a question on the blanket easement. So there is a proposal to put a building on the Part C first?
Actually, my client has sold the property, both parcels. They have an agreement to purchase and sell pending the approval of the easement. And with respect to the blanket easement, as I said before, that the access would be more than likely a shared access given the roundabout design.
So then with the conditions, maybe this is a question for staff. There doesn't seem to be any specific condition that deals with things, because I've never dealt with a blanket, not that I recall. So if a building goes up, it would have to meet approvals so that it can't block anything in future.
Through Madam Chair, I think that's perhaps in line with Member Smith's question as well, is how the details of that easement are prescribed, and a lot of that will rely on the wording to ensure that the intent of the easement is maintained, and in this case, it is for access between those two sites, and that easement will be maintained for access once the easement's in place, and we'll have to make sure that is maintained as we work through the detailed design of those sites. So building placement, parking areas, landscaping, we'll have to make sure that easement and the intent of that easement is maintained.
And the conditions as they read, like condition 5 to me would be the one that would probably, in case, because it says provide a certificate satisfactory to the county.
Yeah,
from
that's
their
correct.
solicitor.
So the solicitor involved will draft the wording, and all parties will have an opportunity to review, and it'll be registered on title.
Okay, thank you. Are there any final comments, questions to the agent? Please, Member Smith.
Through the chair, sorry, I keep talking about the easement, but I'm just noting this, that once you go to the solicitor, and I don't know, because once the building goes on the site, they may require it to be revised, so I don't know if you'll be coming back here to the committee to revise the easement or not, but I know that's in the hands of legal, so just making a note.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? I believe there are none. I'll now request mover on applications B1 to 3-23. Now, shall we have, because it deals with a lot line adjustment, a severance, and an easement, and they are separate conditions to each, I'd request a motion on each application put forth, and then the seconder will note if they are agreeing with acceptance or rejection. Do I have a motion? Member Smith?
So a motion for each, or you just want me to do the first one first? Go with the first one. So I'll make a motion to approve B1-23 as the application is in conformity with the policies of the growth plan and consistent with the policies of the provincial policy statement and maintains the general intent of the official plan and Brant zoning bylaw.
You said you wanted to do the easement first. Is that B1 or B3? Maybe I'm reading it backwards.
I just did B1 first, so that's just the lot creation.
Okay. That was the lot line adjustment. Do we have a seconder? Member Hamilton? I'll now call the vote. Please indicate if you are in favor of the motion, starting with Member Schmidt.
Yes.
Member Hamilton?
Yes.
Member Vamus?
Yes.
Member Panag?
Yes.
Member Smith?
Yes.
And Brown, yes. Application B1-23DN has been approved. I'll now ask for a motion on B2-23DN. Member Smith?
I'll make a motion to approve B2-23 as the application is consistent, conforms to the policies of the growth plan, is consistent with provincial policy statement, and conforms to the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
And subject to the conditions.
And subject to the conditions.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Member Panag? I'll now call the vote to see, starting with Member Schmidt.
Yes.
Member Hamilton?
Yes.
Member Vamus?
Yes.
Member Panag? Member Smith?
Yes.
And Brown, yes. The motion for approval of B2-23DN has carried and the application has been approved. And I will now ask for a motion on application B3-23DN. Member Smith, since
I get all the words tonight. I'll make a motion to approve B3-23 as the application conforms to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the county official plan and the zoning bylaw, subject to the conditions that are listed in the report.
thank you. Is there a seconder? Member Schmidt? I'll now call the vote, starting with Member Schmidt.
Yes.
Member Hamilton.
Yes.
Member Vamus.
Yes.
Member Panag. Member Smith.
Yes.
And Brown, yes. Application B3-23, motion to approve, has carried and the application is approved. Thank you. I will now introduce the item 6.4. No, that's one that was deferred. Item 4. Yes, item 6.4 for applications B4-23 LG, A1-23 LG, and A2-23 LG on the request of the applicant have been deferred. So any members of the public who have attended tonight in speaking to these applications. It will not be heard tonight. Yes, Member Smith.
Through the chair to staff, did a notice go out for the deferral? Do we have to make a motion for that deferral? I forget, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Through the chair, a notice has been sent out for the deferral.
Perfect, thank you.
I will now introduce item 6.5 on our agenda for applications B67, 68, 69, 70, and 71, 22 LG, and turn it over to staff for the presentation of the report and the recommendation. I will have to restate which applications. These are applications B72, 22, B82, 22 LG, and A31, 22 LG for 27 Dawson Road. I'll now turn it over to staff for the report and recommendation.
This is a consent and minor variance applications for lands located at 27 Dawson Road within the geographic township of South Dumfries. The lands are located on south of Glen Morris to the west of Dawson Road and north of the Grand River. The subject lands contain one existing dwelling and the lot has a frontage of 118.64 meters and a lot area of approximately 11.15 hectares. They are privately serviced by septic and well. There are three parts to this application. Part 1 proposes to create a new residential building lot within the hamlet village of Glen Morris on private services. The severed lands contain the existing dwelling and will have an area of 0.35 hectares and a frontage of 45 meters along Dawson Road. The retained lands will have an area of approximately 10.8 hectares and a frontage of 84.2 meters. Part 2 proposes to establish an easement along the existing driveway of the retained lands to access the severed parcel. This access easement is required as there is insufficient site distance to the north along the entire frontage of the severed parcel. The easement has an area of approximately 578 square meters and is to be maintained and free and clear of obstructions or structures. Part 3 is seeking to recognize the modified area of the existing legal non-compliant lot being 10.8 hectares, resulting from the related severance B7222 LG. A stage 1 and 2 archaeological assessment were submitted as part of the complete application. Based on the findings of the report, future development or soil impact will require a further stage 2 archaeological assessment survey, and the requirements listed in the recommendation of the stage 2 are to be followed. A portion of the retained lands will remain agricultural and will continue to be farmed. There is no development proposed on the retained lands at this time. If future lot development is proposed, a detailed review will be completed as part of the building permit review process. The official plan land use designation is hamlet and villages and natural heritage. The zoning is residential, hamlets and villages, agriculture, and natural heritage. No public comments were received as part of the public circulation, It is my professional opinion that the consent applications and subsequent minor variance application to recognize the reduced lot area are appropriate, having consideration for Section 51 of the Planning Act and meets the four tests as established in Section 45. I am recommending approval of the applications B7222LG, B8222LG, and A3122LG for the reasons outlined in my report. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lauren, for the presentation. Does the committee have any comments or questions to staff on this application, these applications? Member Hamilton?
Through the chair to staff, we had this discussion earlier, and I'm still not clear exactly what's happening here. The house, I guess I'm going to go to condition, the first one on the lot creation on number 7. The house is already there. Does it not already have a well and water source? So why does it have to have a proven water source?
So the parcel to be severed does have, through the chair, does have an existing well and septic. However, the retained lands, they are also developable because they are within the suburban residential. So it will need to be established that they can accommodate a well.
Thank you. So I guess this is where my confusion's coming in, or I just can't quite get it. We're severing off a chunk with a house on it, but half these conditions are going towards the retained lands for it to be covered off. Is that what I'm supposed to understand?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Member Smith?
I have a question through the chair to staff. So I just see here condition E. The access easement has to stay free and clear of any basically encumbrances, but we can't do that because this will lapse after 2 years for the conditions. So I'm wondering if the condition needs to be revised, that the applicant provides a copy of an easement agreement so that that can be reviewed and kept on file. That way we know it's registered on title. So if we can revise, my suggestion would be to revise that condition appropriately. And I somewhat agree with Member Hamilton's comments here about the retained lands. With that land obviously being developed in the future, my opinion would be that just a single home on that property to begin with is not an efficient use of that property. So I'm somewhat questioning the use, some of these conditions. I understand probably have to provide proof of potable water, but I think that probably would come after the fact. If the severed home has a well on it, I'm quite positive that the retained lands would also be able to have some water source. So I don't know if there's any response to that, but I guess twofold. Thanks.
Through the chair, we can certainly amend the easement condition to have that added to title. As for the development of the retained lands, we just want to ensure that any new lot creation, if it were to be a severed parcel, we would be requiring these. So it's just interesting in this scenario because typically what would be severed, we have it labeled as the retained lands on the site plan.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering. I know things changed with the Planning Act recently, so sorry, through the chair to staff. It's probably a little bit too late to switch the severed and retained list. I just know when the lawyer goes to probably do the transfer, they're going to run into issues with meeting the conditions. Sorry, that's probably a very open-ended comment, but.
Your thoughts again?
Through the chair to Member Smith, we were discussing this earlier today, and because the changes to the Planning Act allow for us to give consent to the severed and retained, we thought that would be our way to permit this. We would give a separate consent to go on title to the retained, the easement, and the severed parcel. And the conditions would go for each parcel. So we're going to do a motion for the retained, a motion for the severed, a motion for the easement, and we'll have conditions that will apply to each application. And I don't think we'll be doing the potable water for the severed as a condition for the severed one.
Okay, so I guess through the chair to staff, I know you can apply conditions to both now at this point. I guess my main question is, does the applicant have issues with meeting all the conditions?
Through the chair, the agent is present.
Please identify yourself, and I assume you have some information to add.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Ruchika Angrish. I'm a planner with Angrish Group and representing the owner of the property. The owner is present as well. Thank you for your questions, Member Smith. And through you, Chair, at this time, the owner is looking to retain the farm parcel to keep it in a simple way. And at this time, there were no plans to build a house on the farm parcel. So I understand the conditions that talk about portable water. The existing house already has portable water, a well and a septic system. So that should not apply to the farm parcel. Again, keeping it, severed and retained might confuse. So to that farm parcel, which so that's one question. And I hear when the comment was made that there will be a list of conditions for the severed parcel and a list of conditions for the retained parcel. My question will come as it's only creation of one new lot. If we sever the existing house, there are many conditions which talk about cash into a parkland, proof of, firefighting fees and things like those. Will all of them apply to both lots? Because again, technically we are only creating one building lot. So if that's a question of clarification, I would seek anyone to answer, please.
Thank you. Do you have further comments or questions? Member Hamilton?
Through the chair to the agent, just as I look at this, what we're doing, the retained land is approximately 25 acres, of which then we can build a house, or it becomes a building lot. But we want to save the farmland, so to me, we're either going to build this house right on the front where the easement is, or we're going to build it back on the natural heritage if we save the agricultural land, or is there adequate space to put a house some place there? Because when you drive in that driveway where the easement's going to be to the right, you're almost into the natural habitat area, so you should be going back, but then if you go back, you're going to block the easement to get to the farmland. So I'm just confused, I guess. Can you give me a better indication what may happen in the future?
Through you, Chair, I'm not sure if the owner wants to add something to it. David, if you want to add on to what are the plans for the future for development, and maybe David can explain a little bit, but the reason why there were no detailed concept that was prepared for a new house or a new building, because there are no plans at this time. That's what my understanding was, but David can definitely add on to this. And there are natural heritage features on the property, as you have, it is noted in the report as well. And for any building permit, we would definitely need to meet the setback requirements, the buffers that are required. So though the mapping shows there's a large area of the property that is currently zoned and being farmed, when it comes down to the building envelope, it kind of reduces itself because of all the natural heritage features and the buffers that are required by the official plan and the zoning bylaw. And again, because there were no plans at this time, so no detailed assessment of that building envelope was conducted.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments and or questions to the applicant? Do you have anything you would like to add to your agent's information? Yes, and please provide your name.
Good evening. I'm David Samatovic. I'm the owner of 27 Dawson Road. So, as Rishika mentioned, I don't have any solid plans on where I want to build a house or any other structures or anything at this time. I have discussed, before I wanted to do this severance, I have discussed building an accessory structure on the property and discussed different areas that could be placed. One of them was at the back, as you're driving in the back right corner of the property. So along the right, I would do sort of a driveway back to that structure. That's one plan, but I didn't want to, first I wanted to work on the severance, and then I wanted to kind of decide where I would be building a house and that in the future. It's kind of a long-term project for me. To speak to your comment about the potable water, I don't know if this would help, but I could submit some water reports. I did just install a UV filter, but I had the water tested before and after, and it's potable water out of the well at the current house as well. I don't know if that'd be helpful or anything at this time, but the water's very clean before even installing the filter.
Does that answer your question, Member Smith?
Through the chair, I think somewhat. I have to think about it. Thank you.
I have a question for staff then. This whole parcel falls within the new zoning hamlet and villages, this whole property? So even the agriculture portion falls within that sort of boundary we have?
One second, sorry.
So they are designated as suburban residential, and then there is a portion that's natural heritage. And they are located within the secondary urban settlement of Oakland. And the portion...
No,
oh, sorry.
on Glen Morris.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I'm very sorry.
Yes, it's been confusing.
My apologies. Sorry, so it is designated hamlet and villages and natural heritage.
Even the current agricultural lands.
Is designated, yes, that is correct.
Okay. Then I have a question to the applicant, because I was somewhat confused in reading through it too. So if just to sum up, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you're severing off the current house. You want all the other lands that are natural heritage and agriculture lumped in this 20+ parcel. And your intent is to build a house somewhere on that 20+ parcel, of which you need an easement to access, but at the same time, you're not sure where you're going to put the building.
That's correct. I have an idea of where I'd want to, but as Rishika mentioned, like with the setback distances and buffers and considering all the conditions of the natural heritage area, I'm sure that's going to affect where I can actually place a house on the property in the future. The reason I'm doing this in 2 steps is, number one, I don't have a perfect plan for that just yet. And second, I didn't want to complicate this application with also building permits and everything. I wanted to kind of separate them to keep it simple. I hope that had that effect, but.
And I know we can't really speak to the future, but with it all falling within the village and hamlet residential, would this be the most efficient use of the land? And is it a potentiality for a plan of subdivision to come forward then on this land? Or is it restricted by its location with the river on one side, and then there will only be this easement to access it? So is the intent sort of preserved under the Planning Act to keep it as one resident property? And I'll ask that to staff.
Through the chair, so there is the portion towards the back, which is agriculture. So
Yes.
any future development would require further Planning Act applications. It is also not within a settlement boundary.
Oh, I thought
It's
you
my,
just- okay, so it isn't within the settlement boundary?
no.
None of it?
I believe the front portion maybe. I don't
Just
believe
the
all of
portion we're severing?
One second.
Yes, if you could pull up the mapping, because I'm somewhat confused.
If I may, Madam Chair,
Yes.
to clarify, the entire property is within the settlement boundary and the entire property is designated for residential, hamlet residential. A portion of the property at the back is zoned currently agricultural. The front portion is zoned residential hamlet. We did look at,
That's what I thought when it.
yeah, we did look at the development potential for the designated portion of the property, and that's where we started with. We looked at the options for any kind of future development of these lands. Unfortunately, because of all the environmental features, you even doing 30-meter buffer, all you get is kind of like a laneway. You don't get much land left after you put in the required buffers that are needed for the environmental protection. These are very complex environmental features that are on the property, and 120 meters or 60-meter buffers, they don't leave any room for development. So there was no other option other than just what is in front of you. But we did do that analysis up front, and that's why. And again, the frontage of the property has significant features as well. So that's why we had to revise the application to put an easement over the existing driveway. So hopefully that clarifies all the questions.
Thank you. So basically, at the end of the day, we're considering this as an infill, because overall, I'm looking at it going in my past experience, how do we create a 20-plus acre building lot? So because of its location, its restrictions, we're considering it infilling. Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Member Hamilton, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair to the applicant and agent, are you happy with the conditions that are set forth on all three, lot creation, the reduced lot area, and the easement?
Through you, Chair. Again, I think there needs to be a little bit clarity on how the conditions are worded, because at this time there are no plans for the severed lands. If we can certainly do a desktop analysis and provide proof of potable water, that's not a problem. But just making that note, we have read through the rest of the conditions and do not have any concerns.
Thank you. Member Smith?
Just knowing this land's in a settlement area, I'm on the side of wanting this to be deferred, so I can see that there's no other way these lands can be developed. I just have a issue with creating a humongous building lot. I understand you've probably done the analysis, but even if there's potential for that easement to be extended out and lots to be developed that way, more linear, I know you probably have done that, but I'd like to actually see that analysis, because there was no note of that in the report. So I think when you're doing that, that might also give an opportunity to maybe look at the conditions and make sure that they're set appropriately based on maybe the proof of potable water. So that would just be my suggestion, but I'm only one member here, so.
Thank you. And while they are conferring, Member Smith, I had a question. I thought you were referring to condition E, 5E for application B72. You were proposing a modification to that wording?
Yes, that one, and then we probably have to be in line, we'd have to change the conditions of B82, which is the easement. So essentially, an easement agreement needs to be established so that we can actually make it clear that the easement isn't obstructed by anything and it's maintained appropriately, because there's no guarantee that the easement will be maintained properly by the benefiting parcel, so just an easement agreement. So I'm wondering if B82, we just add a condition in there that a draft easement agreement is provided to staff for them to take a look before it's formally registered. If it goes ahead.
Thank you. And do you have a comment back to Member Smith's?
Through your chair, no, satisfied with the revision to that condition.
Thank you. And any final comments or questions on these applications? And I believe on other applications I failed to ask, since, are there any public delegations registered to speak to these? No, there are none. Then I will, noting that there are 3 different applications for severance and easement with separate conditions, could we have a motion separate on each one? Yes, unless there is a motion to defer all of them, it would be one motion for all 3. Member Smith, please go ahead.
I'll make a motion to defer B72, 22, B82, 22, and A31, 22 to provide the applicant with the opportunity to provide more background to how the lands could potentially be developed into higher density, and also to provide an opportunity to look at the conditions and see if there's any way to make it more efficient.
Thank you. Is there a second for this motion? Member Vamus. I'll now call the vote, starting with Member Schmidt.
Yes.
Member Hamilton.
No.
Member Vamus.
Yes.
Member Penegg.
Yes.
Member Smith.
Yes.
Brown, yes. The motion to defer has been carried. I would assume that the applicant could possibly provide information by the next meeting cycle. Thank you. And now, on going back to my agenda, I will now introduce item 6.6, applications B67 to B7122 LG for 125 Oakland Road.
This is a consent application for lands located at 125 Oakland Road within the geographic township of Oaklands. The subject lands are located east of King Street South and south of Oakland Road. The subject lands contain 1 existing dwelling and 2 storage barns. The subject lands are rectangular in shape with a frontage of approximately 194 meters, a depth of approximately 350 meters, and an area of approximately 10.5 hectares. The surrounding area consists of low-density residential and agricultural land uses. Subject lands are privately serviced by well and septic. The displayed images capture the existing conditions of the subject lands. The first two images display where future development will occur, and the third image displays the existing dwelling and agricultural buildings. The applicants are proposing creation of 5 new residential lots in the suburban residential zone within the settlement boundary of Oakland on private services. The severed and retained lands meet the lot creation requirements for the suburban residential zone. The lands were subject to a zoning bylaw amendment application, ZBA 3722DN, that was approved by council on January 31st, 2023. The zoning bylaw amendment proposed to rezone the subject lands from agriculture to suburban residential to facilitate future residential lot creation on the subject lands. Detailed review of proposed new lot development will be completed as part of the building permit review process. The proposed development is 120 meters from the natural heritage system. A minimum 30-meter vegetation protection zone is recommended to ensure there is no development or site alteration in proximity to the wetland. If future development is proposed on the retained lands, an environmental impact study may be required. The subject lands are designated as suburban residential and natural heritage within the County of Brant official plan and zoned as suburban residential and natural heritage within the zoning bylaw. No public comments were received as part of the public circulation. It is my professional recommendation that the consent applications be approved for the reasons outlined in my report. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lauren. Does the committee have any comments or questions to staff on these? Member Hamilton?
Through the chair to staff, I'm looking at this, that complete field that is now currently farmed is now been switched over to residential. There's no agricultural left at the back end, closer to the natural.
Through the chair, the entire parcel has now been rezoned to suburban residential with the exception of the natural heritage portion.
Okay, I guess that was my question. I was just wondering how anybody would access to continue to farm the back end of it, because it appears the lots only go back halfway and there'll still be that amount of land, and I would think somebody would farm it, but it's not, big equipment's not gonna be able to get in and out of there to do it, so I was just curious.
Through the chair, I know there is currently the existing dwelling with barns. I'm not sure whether access would be available through that portion. However, I know the agent is here as well, so they may be able to further clarify.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments or questions to staff? Is the applicant or their agent present?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just happy to answer any questions. There is an existing access to the farm at the back of the property, which is going to be continued to be accessed through the existing retained house.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions to the agent? I had a question, but it appears, I don't know if the land was severed off earlier. It looks like the land goes around to King Street. So is there access to the land from King Street? No, it isn't owned. But, okay. And then there was a condition 7 on page 15 of 20. I didn't see it in detail about, there was a previous development agreement in 1988. How does, so it's requesting removal and a new agreement be registered. So you're aware of that.
Yes, to you, Madam Chair. Yes, there's an existing development agreement that is registered on title, and we've discussed this with staff. Either that agreement will be amended to facilitate any of the conditions of or the technical information related to the severance, or we will remove that agreement and register a new agreement on title. So we have discussed this and and are satisfied with this condition.
And how different was the agreement from 1988 to this one today?
A lot.
Significantly? Okay.
A lot of conditions don't apply to the current policy regime.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments or questions? And I'll ask, are there any public delegations again for this application? None were registered? I believe so. Then with that, I'll ask the committee, are you prepared to make a motion on these applications? Member Hamilton.
I move that we accept consent applications B67 through to B71-22 LG with the conditions that are attached to it because it does meet the official plan and the zoning bylaws of the County of Brant.
Thank you. Member Schmidt, you wish to second? I'll now call the vote, starting with Member Smith.
Yes.
Member Peneg.
Yes.
Member Vamus.
Yes.
Member Hamilton.
Yes.
Member Schmidt.
Yes.
And Brown, yes. The motion to approve applications B67 through to B71-22 LG has carried. The applications have been approved. Thank you. And noting on item 7 of our agenda, the next meeting is scheduled for March 16th, 2023. And again, it will be a hybrid meeting starting at 6 o'clock. And we will move to item 8, adjournment. May I please get a motion to adjourn this meeting? Member Peneg? Thank you. All those in favor, please indicate, starting yes. Everyone say yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The meeting, and yes, I now declare the meeting of February 16th adjourned.